GC Rad 1 here, Yamaha TDUB Club, and today we're going to replace the fork oil. For this little project today, we have 10 weight fork oil from MAXIMA Racing Oils. Good stuff. We use this quite a bit. I think that's what's in there right now, and we're going to replace that. Various tools that we're going to need to remove the forks and do the job, and most importantly, I ordered this Motion Pro fork oil level gauge because these are the tools that you would have to use if you don't have it. And I've done this before and it's kind of tedious. So I wanted to make the job easy, and this little tool is not expensive, especially if you're gonna do this a couple of times a year. If you're putting in the miles, then this Motion Pro fork oil level gauge, I think was maybe like 26 bucks or something like that. And it may have various uses around the shop here for other items. I don't know yet, but I don't know. Well, we'll get into that as we go. But here's our collection of tools that we're going to use today. When you're going to do this fork oil replacement, there's a couple procedures that I like to do just to make the job easier, because one, I don't have a vise here at my new shop. So that'll happen down the road at some point, but this is just something that you can do and you don't even need the vise. Basically, you're going to loosen the top crown, then loosen the top nut of the fork, and then loosen the bottom and then take it out. But the main thing is you want to loosen this top nut before the leg gets out of the crown. That way it's easy, because if you're having to loosen that nut, technically this nut should not be so tight that you can't hold it and loosen it. But in the shop, I've seen numerous times where we have to put the impact gun on there and get this thing out when the tube is out. But my coworker showed me a old school trick. Just leave the fork leg in here, loosen the top nut after you've loosened the crown, then you can get it out and deal with it at that. But we're going to go through each step today, one step at a time, and we'll show you the procedure. All right, this is the fork crown, or the triple clamp. This is the top one. It's a 10 millimeter. We're going to loosen it first, and that's pretty loose there. Then the fork cap is a 19 millimeter. You just want to get that guy loose. You don't need to bring it all the way out. And then we can proceed to the next part. All right, now that we got the shock tower nut loosened up, we're just going to jump into the bottom and start on the next part. The front wheel has to come off, the front brake caliper has to come off, front fender, all these items have to come off in order to get the fork tubes out. So I like to start at the top and get that nut loosened up first, so that way I don't forget about it. That's why we started there. But now we're going to jump down here and start removing the items that need to be removed down below. And look at that, there's some dirt there. Oh my goodness. So now that we got that piece out of the way, we'll bust this little bracket out of the way. Get it loosened up at least. That's loose. Actually, we don't even need to, I don't believe we need to remove that. I think that'll just float, but we'll take a look at it, give it a little inspection. Now we will take off the front brake caliper. These bolts are both the same, so there's no problem sorting out which one is which. They're equal length. So now we're going to pull this rotor off the back. Yep, I'm gonna do this. This is just the Speedo cable that goes into the housing there. This way I can pull the whole thing back, and what I like to do is I like to use the skid plate as a place to hold my caliper. And it just sits right there. Front wheel removal is 19 millimeters. You want to pay special attention to your spacers. On other dirt bikes, they don't have the caps and such on here, and there'll be one on each side, and you're like trying to figure out like which one went where. So it's one of those things you want to pay special attention to. It just makes for a good habit. This is your Speedo unit. That's going to need a little detailing and re-greasing, so we'll get into that as well. Okay, now we're going to remove the front fender, and it's not the nuts on top. Those are decorative. It's the 10 millimeter underneath that you're going to pull out in order to remove the front fender. Ounce of shock equals a pound of force, as my dad always said. I know a lot of guys will use electric tools, but I tend to use, well, one, I don't have all those tools, even though when I was at the motorcycle shop, the guys were laughing because I would always be doing stuff by hand instead of using the electric tools, but I just told them, I'm like, hey, I'm just practicing for when I'm at home. All right, now front fender's removed, we can go on to the next step, and we're gonna get into these guys up here. Those are 10 millimeters. And you don't have to take these bolts all the way out, you just gotta get them loose enough, like that, as the fork will just come right on down. And now we have our top cap loose, so now we don't have to fight to get that out. While we're here, we'll take this boot off. That way we can inspect it, see if we have any leaky seals. I don't believe I have any leaky seals, but since we're in here, we might as well clean it up, take a look and see. And now we're just going to do the same thing on this side. Loosen the fork crown at the top here, give it enough, and we'll loosen the fork nut and give it enough. This is my 19 millimeter. It's a sliding extension. It goes actually in my tool kit. But now that's loosened, and we can loosen the fork bottom crown, and you kind of want to have your tube checked up because sometimes you can loosen it and it'll just fall right out on you. All right, and there we have it. Okay, here we're gonna carefully pry these boots up. So we can see if there's any crud underneath. Clean them out. You know, if we need to replace fork seals, then this will, you know, you'll see it wet up here, but this looks pretty good. Not seeing any leakage there, but we'll try to clean all that dirt out. It's one of them good things to do. Obviously some moisture in there from the last time it got washed, but looking good. Just typical dirt buildup on top of the fork seal, but looks okay. Doesn't look like any oil is coming out. So when we loosened up the top, you notice we didn't loosen it up so much that the fluid will come out, but that's what we're going to do next. That's why I have a pan here. We'll dump this fluid out. Woo! Pay attention to what comes out, because what comes out has to come back in. In the specified order. So it was the top washer, spacer, bottom washer, and with the nut. And here comes the spring. Yeah, and that lube, it doesn't look bad, but I can smell it. It smells pretty spectacularly. And you want to like give it some pumps back and forth to get all the fluid out. And we'll do the other side. Like to keep everything in order. So this is the left side tube, left side, right tube, right side, left and right springs. I'm gonna get these things fully drained out. I'm gonna set them up somewhere where I can like drain them, let them sit for a few minutes, and then we'll get set up for the next process. I simply just set them up so they can drain, but then I will squish them back and forth again to fully flush them out. I'm just going to get set up for the next part. I'm just inspecting the springs, wiping them down, and at some point I'll do some custom race modification to these springs. I'll actually polish them. So the Precision Concepts Desert Race, you can feel the spring. It has a kind of a porous metal. What happens is when that thing's going up and down in the fork tube, all that surface on there is aiding in the aeration of the oil. So learned from the guys over at Precision Concepts when I built my 950 Adventure that the Dakar program guys were actually polishing the spring surface just to help keep the fluid cooler. They didn't exactly say all the reasons why they were doing it. They just said that they were doing that, and I'm like, all right, I'll do that to these little bad boys at some point, but I need a buffing wheel to do so. Right now, I don't even have a shelf to mount a vise to, much less a polishing wheel. So while I have these bad boys apart, I'm just going to try to clean all the goop out of the top of the fork seals. I know they're going to get dirty in like the first 15 minutes. When I clean, I like to go clean. All right, now we're ready to put the fork oil into the forks. We're not going to put the old fork oil back in. We're going to put new fork oil. Maxima 10 weight. That's what the Yamaha specifies for the TW200. 10 weight. That's what we're going to use. And I showed you earlier the chopstick and pencil marking and a tape measure. Basically, we're going to fill the tube up 135 millimeters from the top, and that's why the Motion Pro tool works so great. But you could measure off 135 millimeters on your chopstick, put it down in there, and hope you don't drop it. And then if you have too much, you gotta dump it out and, you know, fill back in or whatever. I've done it a few times like that in a pinch. I don't like doing it, more of a field method. But with this tool being under 30 bucks delivered to you, the Motion Pro, it's great because we can measure off our 135 millimeters, set it in position, lock it down, fill the fluid up, and then slurp off whatever excess that we have. So having the right tool will hopefully get you to do this job and do it a couple times a year maybe, because like your motor, putting new oil in your forks just makes them freshy fresh. I mean, you can definitely tell. You can tell when you put new oil in your engine. You love that. And same thing with the forks. So we're gonna get into it here. All right, let's do this. And this would be one of those ideal situations if I had a way to stand the forks up. Matter of fact, let me see what I can do here. Will that work? Yeah, milk crate is going to work. Milk crate's truly the world's greatest invention. Okay, so now I have a way to hold my fork up, and we're going to measure 135 millimeters. All right, so now I have this measured to 135 millimeters. So that'll be how we will determine our level. Hopefully I bought enough oil, about 2. So spring out, once again, fully compressed, we shall fill. You got to remember, when we were taking the fluid out, we were pumping it back and forth. So you want to make sure that you have all the air out of that interior cavity. So I'll pump it a few times. We might need just a little bit more. And it's one of those processes. You don't want to be in a rush. You want to take your time. All right, I think we got plenty in there. And there you have it. So we removed the excess. So now we can put our spring back in, driver's side fork. Wait a second, the spring's not going all the way back down. That's right, because you have your tube compressed in order to get your proper fill level. You gotta remember the levels in which you took the stuff out. So it was the washer, spacer, top spacer, and mine may be a little different than yours because my suspension was built by TCS, so I don't know what the factory looks like on the inside. All right, so we're gonna button it back up, and that doesn't need to be tight. It's got a rubber seal on there, plenty of, so you just want to have it snug because you don't want, next time when you go to take it off, you have to, you know, manhandle it with 1,000 pounds. Oh yeah, freshy fresh. It's gonna be good. It's like getting fresh suspension all over again. All right, compress, add juice. You'll see when you pour it in, you'll see little bubbles coming up because it's basically filling that inner cavity wall. So you can pull it down and help cycle it. And when you do that, you'll see that the fluid has dropped down inside. And that way you can add some more. And then we're going to extract out the excess. Don't pull it out so much that the syringe dumps it all over you out here. So it looks like I used about half. So if you're in a pinch, one full one will do you. But that's gonna be the problem when you are doing the second round and you're halfway down and like, okay, how much is in there? You know, having a backup is always good. All right, so we're ready to drop spring edge in. Carefully poke the toothpick.
Carefully poke the toothpick.
That washer, spacer, top cap, washer, and then actual cap itself. Just want to be careful not to cross thread anything. We got her in. Give it a little tighten. Oh yeah. Oh man, I'm getting excited. Freshy forks. Here we come. All right, so what do we need to do next? We need to put the fork tubes back in the bike and then button it all back together. All right, so let's get to it. Yeah, before we get too carried away, we're going to the little Speedo guy. Look at that thing, it's all crusty. The grease smells pretty burnt. So we're going to clean the crust off, give it a little freshy fresh, and that way our Speedo can keep on speeding. I need a parts cleaner. I use my oil catch pan for all the fine duties. Yeah, that smells properly burnt. I've never taken one of these guys apart. It's got some circlips on there. Maybe at my 10,000 mile job, which is coming up here in about 400 or 500 miles. Maybe that'll just be one of the jobs I'll do is rebuild the Speedo. I should do it now, huh? I don't know if you can see it in there. There's a little gear drive unit in there, and basically this, your wheel spins this whole mechanism. This fits out on the outside of the wheel, and there's some little prongs on the wheel that engage with this, spins this, which spins the cable, makes it all work, keeps your mileage checked up. But you gotta imagine this thing spinning at like incredible speeds for how small it is. It needs some serious grease, and I'm going to hopefully dig up my grease. Let's see how much trouble I get into. Okay, and there's the way it came apart. That looks about all we're gonna get into. But that at least gives me more room to pack in more grease. And I'm gonna do some more cleaning on this bad boy. Ha ha ha! Look what I found. Some good old nitro cleaner. I need something to clean this thing out with. That's really gonna get all of the grease out. WD-40 is good for some things, but not everything. This will get all of the grease out. Yeah, those of you who know me from my RC car industry, you know what that action is about all right there. I was, when I was packing to move back here, hidden deep underneath my workbench was an old can of this nitro spray. I'm like, oh yeah, this stuff is great cleaner. If only I had a parts washer. Start to see a little bit more what we're getting into here. So it's just gonna need some serious grease packing. I wanna get all the excess crust out. One less job I have to do at my 10,000 mile job. I need a small parts washer. I'm the king of ghetto-licious. Get her done. Heck, I hope I have enough grease to put back in here. So now you can really see what's going on. You can see the teeth in there that turn this thing. So yeah, we're just giving this thing a thorough washing. All right, it's looking pretty good. Kind of weird though how this thing has always been super greased, but you can see the gear inside there. It has some weird rust buildup on it, and I don't know how, but anyhow, I'm just gonna super grease pack it back up. Spray it all out real good for the protection of it. I'm gonna coat it with that WD-40 real quick. I don't want any further rust to develop. Dump that out. I'll let that sit and drain, and while that's doing that, I'm gonna go find my waterproof grease. Dun dun dun. Bel Ray waterproof grease. I've had this tub for quite a while, and guess what? Oh, we're scraping the bottom of the barrel. Okay, and that barrel's looking pretty crusty. So this may be a temporary grease rehaul, only to redo this in a couple of months. So man, oh man. So I don't know if you saw that. With enough cleaning, the whole unit came out. So now I can do a little bit more detailed cleaning on it. Try to kill that grease that's in there, and then I'm gonna do this a little bit more. All right, so I've cleaned up my little gear here. Basically, I just took some 2000 grit sandpaper and just kind of cleaned up some of the surface rust. I don't even know how this thing became rusted. It's had grease in there the whole time. I did grease it when I first got the bike, so it could have been previous owner neglect within 300 miles. That's kind of hard to believe, but I don't know. But anyhow, pack this bad boy up with grease. Get down in there, grease. I'm sure a lot of this will squeeze back up once we push the gear down in there, but that's okay. We'll just mash it back down in there. And just because I'm a freak about it, I'm gonna grease this before I even put it down in there. Grease all the little teeth, make sure that they got grease inside there. I don't want no excuse. Yeah, I make a mess with this stuff. I gotta make sure it goes all the way down in there. There we go, it's all the way down. We can do our remainder fill of grease, which I'm gonna have to make another trip to the moto shop. It's looking pretty lubed up. Don't want to have my Speedo going out. We'll see how that looks in 500 miles or so when I go to do the 10,000 mile inspection. Now that this is done, maybe I don't do it at all. All right, so it's super greasy all over, but the main idea was to get all the grease inside. Now let's button it back up and get on with this mission. As you can see, it's got some keyways in here. We just need to make sure that that gets set back in there. There we go. We got that down. Get our washer back down. And then we can set our snap ring back in. Make sure that that's all the way down and in. Yep, it spins. We're looking good. All right. Now we're just going to replace our fork boots. We'll determine where to tighten them up at once we get them on the bike. All right, so now we're going to put forks back on. So you want to pay special attention to where your fork sits in the top of the crown. Is it flush? Is it cap height? That's actually a note I should have told you when you got started. Mine's always been flush. Actually, when TCS set my bike up, that's how he set my bike up. It's cap flush to the crown. Lots of different theories on all that kind of stuff. So 10 millimeter down there, 8 millimeter on the top. It's about 15 foot-pounds of pressure on those. 20, 19, 18, 17, 16, 15. And whenever you're doing your torque specifications, small inputs, and when it's a double bolt as this is on the bottom, you don't do one and do the other. You kind of bring them both up at the same time, because if you tighten one side down before the other, then it's not good. You want to bring them both up at the same time. And then I always like to double check it. You can see that little bit of movement. All right, fitting. When it comes to steering input devices, you know, triple clamps, front forks, I like to be kind of precise about this stuff. This is really kind of important stuff. Over tightening things could lead to breakage. I don't want anything. You can kind of do it by the book. Now that my fork's on, I can bring the fork boot up all the way, cinch that bad boy back down. Now we can do the other side. Come on. It's really just being patient, taking your time, looking at what you're doing. Don't be thinking about anything else. Being as precise as you can. Take your time, be in the moment. Stay focused. Don't be rushing. Rushing is the part I hate. I hate rushing the most. Only in race conditions is there rushing. Torque wrench. All right. First thing you do, as soon as you finish with your torque wrench, relieve the pressure. Your torque wrench will be no good. Yes, and if you're noticing, my bike, previous owner took the reflectors off, and I just haven't replaced them. I was thinking maybe I'll put some auxiliary lights on there or something, I don't know, but haven't done that either. All right, so now we'll put our front fender back on. Here's a wild card question for you. Does anyone know on the front fender why this has this little rubber plug punched through here? What is that for? I've often wondered, is that for some other country that has like a Speedo cable that goes through there? Like, I don't know why this front fender has that little cutout and rubber plug. If someone knows, drop that down in the comments below. You get 30 bonus points and 2 cookies if you have the correct answer. And no, I don't have the correct answer. I'm gonna have to go look it up myself. Sometimes when you're sitting around, you're often wondering like, what is that for? And I have no clue. Nothing should be forced to go back in, so you know, if you put it back together and it's just not quite right, just spin, you know, you can spin the fork tube a little bit just to get it to go back in comfortably. Again, no force. And put all 4 of the bolts back in before you start cinching, wrenching them down. Because this little front fork crown, it's almost like an old school flat track steering brace, and it helps keep the forks aligned and probably gives them just a little bit of strength. Okay, now you can go back in and cinch them down. And again, I just tighten them down just a little bit, get them all snug, and then come back in for the final tightening. So be careful, don't tighten them too tight to where they want to strip out. That's the last thing you want to do, is strip out a bolt in this kind of area. There's that. Now we can move on to the next step. All right. Okay, now let's get this front tire on here. So now with our rebuilt steering dampener, not steering dampener, but a Speedo sensor, we can get this bad boy back together. Make sure you get your bushing back in. Everything's got to go back in. You got to pay special attention that this has a rear slot that is going to fit into the fork there. Nothing major. Just feel it out. Everything just wants to move on you. It can be frustrating. I get it. See? It's never a slam done and easy do it. So everything wants to spin and move and turn. All right, now we're making motion. All right, woo, As if that wasn't enough wrestle. Okay, now moving on to the next step. Now we get to take the front caliper. Sometimes in your caliper you can see the brake pad will fall over, or if you accidentally hit the brake lever, it squeezes them together. Sometimes you have to kind of get in here, pry these things apart, so that way when you put it over the disc, it'll go in easy and have space. Sometimes it's easy to just go ahead and do that anyhow. But the first thing you have to do is give the brake lever a squeeze up there a few times just to make sure your bike has front brake. The last thing you want to do is jump on that bad boy and take off and be like, oh crap, no front brake. Our Speedo cable is back in its place. We'll put our bracket back on here, but first we're just going to go ahead and get this caliper cinched down. Get the cable guide mounted back in position. Put the Speedo brake cable guide back on. We are almost finished. Kind of trickery. There's a spot on the fork that this has to sit across to get the grip. So it has to get cinched down on that spot. All right, I think we might be in business. Do that front brake. And back the tension. Okay, check it out. Tighten, 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 tighten. It's a good idea to just go back and put a wrench on all those. Just, you know, it's just, it never hurts, right? Never hurts. So that's tight, that's tight. Tight, tight. Tight, tight. Check that brake again. All right, GC Rad 1 here. And I hope this kind of gives you a little bit of confidence to go do your own fork oil change. Let me know if you have any questions down below. I'll try to answer whatever I can, and we'll kind of go from there. But that's basically what you do in order to change your fork fluid. And pretty soon I'll be doing a front fork seal swap on these forks, because these forks are completely toast, so they need new seals. So if you want to see how to do seals on that, maybe I'll integrate that into the page, because basically this is the technology that the TDUB comes from, is the old Yamaha XT500 and the DT series. This is probably more in tune with the DTs, I'm not sure, but they're still like old classic. I mean, this is a 1987 Yamaha TW200, still in production as a 2016 model. That's the year model of this bike. But those forks haven't changed since '87. All right, man. Have a good one. Happy T-dubbing. See you on the next round. Peace.
Hi, time for timer, and time to make a week's supply of healthy after-school snacks. Now some weekend when it's raining and your mother is complaining because you're hanging around just twiddling your thumbs. Tell your mom that you've been itching to make something in the kitchen, and oh yes, the mess will be a minimum. But the thing that's going to please her is you make it in the freezer, and nothing could be easier to fix. Now just watch as I go through it. Really, all you need to do it is some kind of juice and just a few toothpicks. Okay, now take an empty ice tray and fill it up with orange juice or lemonade or pomegranate juice or whatever turns you on. Then cover the tray with plastic wrap, carefully poke the toothpicks through the plastic, put it in the freezer, and in a few hours, presto, stacks of snacks. Don't wait until it rains before you try this nifty trick. You'll have a fun time making sunshine on a stick.